I got the stomach flu. And my host mother had had the stomach flu. My host sister had had the stomach flu. And then I got the stomach flu. So we knew I had the stomach flu. And in Germany, you can't get anything over the counter. So I couldn't go to the pharmacy or the grocery store or whatever and get something for the stomach flu to help my stomach.
Yeah.
So I asked my host mother if she would go and tell the doctor, hey, Megan has this. We've had it through our family. That's what it is. Can you give her something? She was like, yeah, no problem. I'll do it. Well, she gets there and the doctor asks if there was a chance I might be pregnant.
Oh, no. Hello and welcome to this episode of Life Exchange Stories of Understanding. I'm your host, Kelsey Ross, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi, my name is Megan Herndon. I am currently a YFU host mother. I'm hosting my 6th exchange student. I'm also a YFU volunteer, a local coordinator, and I was also an alumni of YFU when I was in high school.
And Megan, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to get to talk to you and get to learn a bit more about your story.
I'm excited to be here.
So let's begin with your experience as an alumni. How did you first hear about YFU?
I heard about YFU from my German teacher. A German teacher, I was taking 2nd year German, and it's crazy to think that I had 2 years of German under my belt when I went to Germany. So I heard about the Congress Bundestag scholarship back then, and I applied, and I was awarded the scholarship, and I went to Germany.
Amazing. And for those who may not be familiar with the Congress Bundestag scholarship, could you give us a little idea of what that is?
Sure. It's a scholarship that's funded by Congress, which everybody knows what Congress is, and the Bundestag, which is the equivalent organization in Germany. And they put the funds together, and they sponsor both Americans going to Germany and Germans coming to America at the same time, and they fund everything, so it's a full ride. They pay for your flight, they pay for all the YFU expenses. The only thing that they don't pay for, I believe, is your passport, but it's a full ride scholarship, and it's a really amazing experience. And you get to meet either your Congress or Bundestag member when you're overseas, and it's just an amazing program.
Awesome.
I think what was year 7. I was pretty early on in the scholarship.
Really? That's cool. So with you being a volunteer, have you worked with any current CBYX students or CBYX students in your past as a local coordinator or volunteer?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I had a CBYX alum living in my house, Laura. And also there was another CBYX student in Chattanooga as well that year.
Awesome. And have you noticed any differences with the CBYX program from when you were part of it to when you were working with Laura and the other CBYX alum in Chattanooga?
What I found interesting is, of course, coming the other direction, that the Bundestag members in Germany actually select their recipients. So this on the U.S. side, we select the people, and then we tell Congress these are the people that we picked. But on the Bundestag side, they actually pick their students themselves.
Yeah.
And then they develop somewhat of a relationship with them. So in that they get emails from them and they talk back and forth. And I know that Laura sent an email to her Bundestag member once a month just to say, hey, I went to a football game and I did this. And he wrote back and said, oh, that's exciting. And so it was pretty neat for them to develop that communication.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's not something you generally hear about, like students here in the United States being able to talk to their congressman or woman. That's amazing. And I'm curious because you had said you had taken 2 years of German in high school. One, I find really interesting that there's a high school that's teaching German. That's not something you necessarily hear all the time here in the United States. So I'm curious what drew you to the German language to learn.
Well, I was actually, the German teacher was a family friend. And so when I got into high school, it really wasn't a question. It was like, hey, you're taking Miss Lockett's class, right? And I was like, yes, I am. I guess I am. Because I've known her since I was a child. So it was really a cool connection.
Yeah.
But I really loved learning German. It was and she made it really fun. I remember the first day of class, she came in and she had like 15 layers of clothes on. And she came in and she was like, this is a hat in German. And she took it off, and then she was like, these are sunglasses. And she took off, and we had to repeat. And she did fun things like that all the time. We sang Sesame Street in our German class all the time.
Nice.
Because when you're learning a language, you learn at the level of a kindergartner, right?
Yeah.
You don't learn high school level stuff your first year. So we would sing like the numbers song, and we would sing the color song. It was fun.
Cool. And with you having a little bit of German experience under your belt, were you able to meet some of your other CBYX cohorts during your orientations and stuff? And did they also have that experience, or were they going in blind, essentially?
The majority of the students that went with me did not have any German whatsoever.
Wow.
And I went to Germany in 1990 and 91. So I had the unique experience of German history. If you know German history, in 1989 is when the wall fell. So it was the first year after the wall came down. And it was the first year that Americans were placed in the former East. So there were several people that went to the former East and had zero German skills. The people in the former East did not speak any English because they only learned Russian. So I have no idea how that worked, but they made it work.
Wow. That is wild. Oh my goodness. So I take it you were placed in the west side of Germany then?
I was.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would say of the 100 people, I think they had 100 CBYX recipients that year, that there were maybe 15 of us that had any German at all. So it was actually pretty unusual to have any.
Yeah. And I hear that is still kind of a common thing today with these current CBYX scholars. A lot of them are learning German in Duolingo on their own. They don't offer German in their schools, or maybe they do, but they forgot a lot of it. So got to rely on the owl to help them.
Yep.
For somebody who maybe doesn't have the great leg up of having German school like classes in their school, do you have any tips for a future student who may be going to Germany to help learn the German language?
Well, I think Duolingo or something like that, some kind of app is a good start, to learn the basics. So you can at least say, hello, my name is, and where's the bathroom, and all those very basic things that you need to know. But also watching children's cartoons is really beneficial. Like go and Google, or go on YouTube and look up German Sesame Street or German, I don't know, SpongeBob, whatever it is you would like to watch, right? And you can find those in the foreign language, and you watch that and you learn, because like I said, that's the level that you start at is the level of a kindergartner, and that's what they like to watch. So watch that. I read when I got there, I had a exchange cousin who was 8 or 9 years old, and he had a lot of comic books in his room. And the first time I went over there, he wanted me to read to him. And I was like, in German? Okay. But then I looked and I was like, I could actually read. And I was like, what? I can read. And so he let me take books home. And that's kind of how I started learning a lot of vocabulary.
That's so cool. I mean, you don't think of I wouldn't necessarily think of comic books in the German language. Of course they exist, but kind of limited American perspective. That's so cool to me. That's amazing. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit to when you finally found out that you won the CBYX scholarship after the big long application process that we've talked about before with other participants. So take me back to that moment. What was that like for you?
It was actually kind of funny because I was a runner-up to the scholarship. Okay. Then I won it because somebody dropped out, unfortunately for them. And so I didn't find out until later. So originally I got of course, this was back in the dark ages, right? No email, no anything like that. So I got a letter in the mail saying I had not won the scholarship. And then about a week later, I was homesick. I actually had the chicken pox. I was homesick.
Ooh.
And I got a call from YFU. I don't know if it was YFU or CBYX. I don't remember. But somebody called me and said, are you still interested in this scholarship? And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, we had somebody drop out and you were the runner-up, so we would be happy to award you that scholarship. But I couldn't call my parents because they were both at work. So I had to wait all day until I got home, and I was about to go insane. By the time they got home, I was like just screaming and yelling at them. And I was like,
oh my gosh. I don't know how you kept it in that long. I don't know if I'd have been able to. I probably would have exploded. Feeling with chicken pox on top of that's not great. And it's unfortunate for them that the other person that they didn't get to go, but very fortunate for you. And that's great. I'm guessing that you also went through an orientation process before you studied abroad and went over. As somebody who has recently gone through the orientation process with you, this very recent NPDO, do you notice anything different with these current ones versus the ones that you went through as a participant?
I think a lot of the technology has changed. And so the experience is so different now than it was when I was there, because the communication is so much easier with home. And it's just a lot easier. You can transfer money easily. There were just a lot of hurdles that you don't have anymore when you go on these exchanges, which is good, but it can also be bad because, too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing, right? And so it's almost, I feel like my language improved very fast because I spoke zero English while I was there. I spoke very little because who was I going to talk to? And calling home was very expensive at the time. So I called home for like 15 minutes a week, and that's it. And sometimes I didn't even get to do that if I couldn't make the time align. So I think it's somewhat of a bigger challenge now to cut yourself off from that, because I, of course, didn't have YouTube. I couldn't watch anything in English. My host parents didn't even get like a CNN and from Europe, from England. They didn't even get that. So I got nothing in English the whole time I was there. So like I said, it's good and bad. You can easily rely on it if you're over there to have a safe space, but at the same time, you don't want to do that all the time.
That's fair. But I, again, agree with you with the good and bad, like having that complete immersion and nothing to really break that. I think that would be really an even more impactful experience, I would say. I'm curious how your parents felt about not being able to stay in contact with you and being able to check in on you all the time.
It was hard. Later in life, my mother told me that she really had a difficult time after I left the airport. She said she just like really broke down to the point where she had to like sleep for like 2 days because she was so upset and she was so scared for me. And of course, with lack of communication, when I got there, it was 2-3 days before they heard from me, before I was able to settle in and all this kind of stuff. But my parents were very excited for me. My parents were both educators, so they understood the importance of the exchange and they understood the importance of the experience, but they were also terrified because, as I can imagine, being now a mother myself, to know that my child would go to the hands of some stranger that I didn't even know, and it could be wonderful and it could be crazy. People put natural parents and students put a lot of trust in their host families.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of vetting and making sure that the host parents are safe and loving parents, as you are well aware of as a host mom yourself. So speaking of your host family, when did you hear that you had a host family and what was it like the first time that you met them?
Well, again, dark ages. I got a letter telling me who my host family was and the city that I was going to live in. But I actually didn't meet them or talk to them before I arrived because there was really not a good way to contact them. But I remember it was so sweet. My father took the name of the city, and pre-internet, how do you find the name of a city in Germany? We didn't have any kind of encyclopedia that had that kind of that detail, right? Like we knew the big cities in Germany, but this little tiny town, who knows where that was? So he went to the public library and he asked the librarian to help him find that city. And she was super excited. She was just like, oh, this is going to be a fun scavenger hunt. And so they went to some encyclopedia, some map that they had in the library. And I still have it, this piece of paper that he got. And they took a copy of Germany. And then they took a zoomed in copy of right near where I was. I lived near Hamburg. My first host family that I went to for my language school was in Hamburg area. And so they took a picture of Hamburg and then they circled the city where I was going to go.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
My goodness. And so you've gone through orientation, then you've got a host family, and there you are in Germany. So how were those first initial moments for you realizing that this is where your life's going to be now?
It was scary. I mean, even though I'd had 2 years of German, I really did not understand a lot of things when I first got there at all. And so I did a lot of hands and feet talking. We did a lot of laughing. We would laugh at my German skills and their attempted English skills. We would just think, And we played a lot of cards because that was also a good communication. I could teach them how to play cards without really talking. So I kind of built a rapport with them. I had a host sister who was 11, somewhere around there. And so she was fun to play with. She was still in that stage where she liked to go out and play on the swing set and that kind of thing. So we would do a lot of that. But they were just great people. They were really great people.
Amazing. And the card games, what sort of games were you teaching each other?
Gosh, like Crazy Eights or Hearts, that kind of thing. It's simple enough that I could explain it in my limited.
And, speaking of the limited experience, were there any sort of funny moments of mistranslation that really stand out to you?
Oh my goodness. It's not really a mistranslation, but it was definitely a language issue. When I went to the language school and I was with that host family for about a month. And then I went to my permanent host family, which is a little bit further south in Germany between Frankfurt and Hanover.
Okay.
And I'd been there about a month or so, and I'd been hanging out with a bunch of people, but, and one of them was a guy, but it wasn't like a love of my life boyfriend for the rest of my life. Anyway, so I got the stomach flu, and my host mother had the stomach flu. My host sister had the stomach flu, and then I got the stomach flu. So we knew I had the stomach flu. And to go through the rigmarole of getting a doctor visit and all that kind of stuff is difficult. And in Germany, you can't get anything over the counter. Like you can't even get Tylenol over the counter. It's just, you have to have a prescription for everything. So I couldn't go to the pharmacy or the grocery store or whatever and get something for the stomach flu to help my stomach.
Yeah.
So I asked my host mother if she would go and tell the doctor, hey, Megan has this. We've had it through our family. That's what it is. Can you give her something? She was like, yeah, no problem. I'll do it. Well, she gets there and the doctor asks if there was a chance I might be pregnant.
Oh, no.
And of course the answer was no. The answer was but she calls me on the phone from the doctor's office in the waiting room. And she goes, Megan, is there any chance you could be pregnant? I had no idea what the word for pregnant was in German. I didn't know what she was asking me. I was like, I don't understand. And so she had to explain it to me. And it took her 5 minutes to explain to me what the word pregnant means.
Oh, no.
I figured it out. I was like, oh, yeah, there's like zero possibility. Oh, that way I could be pregnant. And she was like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Over the phone. But this was a small town.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of people in the waiting room who did not hear my answer. So the entire year that I was there were people in that town that thought I was pregnant.
No.
Logic would say that I got there in, August and I was leaving in May, that if that would have happened in August or September, they would notice that soon. But like February, there were still people who were thinking I was pregnant. So fast forward 20 years.
Yeah.
I went back to visit and I went to a festival that happened to be going on that weekend. I heard people on the table behind me saying, oh, that's the exchange student that lived with them. I wonder if she had the baby.
No.
20 years later.
Oh my goodness.
So there was all these rumors about me in that town that were completely false, but lasted forever.
I mean, I've never heard anything like that. So to prepare.
Yes.
Hopefully not. Hopefully nobody else has a similar experience. But just in case, if somebody were to be asked if they are pregnant in German, how do you say that?
Bist du schwanger? Schwanger
okay.
is the German word. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll need to know that.
Just in case, you never know. Got to keep these students prepared.
Right.
Hopefully it was at least you had a closer bond with your host mom before that was asked. Were you able to create a good, healthy bond with your host family?
What? I mean, I was really close with my host sister. I was somewhat close with my host mother. We had very different backgrounds and very different perspectives on life, but it's also kind of a funny story. So my host mother was a stay-at-home mom and didn't believe that women should work outside the home and had a very strong belief about this, which I respect. I understand that. I mean, hey, if I could stay at home and not work, I would also maybe do so. But she just didn't believe in it. And coming from a family of educators, I it was drilled into me at an early age. You know, I'm going to go, of course, to college. I'm going to, of course, further my education. I'm going to, of course, find a way to make a living. And she didn't really understand that at all.
Yeah.
And my host sister was at the age in Germany where you have to decide what level of high school you want to go to. So they have 3 levels of high school in Germany. They have like a basic school, like a middle school, a middle range school, and then the top level school is to prepare you to go to college. So not everybody goes to the higher one that goes to college, but you have to decide when you're like 12 years old whether or not you want to go to which
Wow.
his sister came to me and she said, "What is your opinion? What do you think I should do?"
Yeah.
And of course, as a family of a child of educators, I said, "Well, if it was me, you can always, if you don't use your education, pay. But if you need the education and you don't have it, it's very difficult to do later on in life once you have responsibilities and you have things that you need to do." And I said, "So I would get the most education you can, and then if you don't need it, you don't need it." And my host mother was very angry with me because she felt like I overstepped and that should have come from her, which I understand. But at the time, I didn't really understand that. But I understand that now. Anyway, so later on in life, when I went back to visit 20 years later, it turns out that my host mother changed her tune very greatly because her husband unfortunately got sick. He's okay, but he got sick and she was scared at the time that he might not make it. And so she actually went and got somewhat of a little bit of an education, got a job. And she said the whole time she was doing that, she thought about me and about how I had told her that, you know, I always wanted to be able to support myself, even if I had a family, even if I had somebody who could support me. I wanted to be able to do it myself. And my host sister became a teacher. Yeah. So I feel like that was a legacy, a way that I touched that family's life. Yeah. Just to put that seed in there to say, you know, this is education and this is important to me.
Wow. I mean, what a full circle moment there. That's amazing. Wow. Kind of speechless with that, honestly. I'm glad that your host sister was able to figure out that education is something that she would enjoy, and hopefully that influence came from you and you were able to inspire her in that way.
I mean, a little part. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but a little part of it I think did come from me, I hope.
Yeah. With your host mom also changing your tune too and having that change of heart and being influenced by you, were there any ways where they in turn were able to influence you?
Yeah, I didn't, of course, realize it at the time as much. I think just the family activities that they did together. So my family is very close, you know, my natural family, and we do a lot of things together, but they were very intentional about it. And I always respected that. They would go on walks together in the woods. They would plan on the weekends what they were going to do. In my family, it kind of happened by happenstance sometimes, right? Like we would all be together to eat dinner, but we really didn't plan it that way. We would just be all together for dinner. But they were very intentional about that. And I thought that was really a neat thing to see. And also just the whole stereotypical orderliness of the German culture. You know, it was everything definitely had its place. Everything definitely was in a certain order for a reason. And that also helps, you know, it helps in your organization, in your life later on when you have to do things on your own.
Yeah. And I'm curious too. I mean, it sounds like there were some challenges for sure, you know, having the town think that you may be pregnant and having the not so close relationship with your host mom, but were there any other challenges that you had to overcome while you were on program?
It's difficult to be completely on your own. And the biggest challenge that I had was, you know, how many teenagers really have to do something completely on their own without any support? You know, I had never had to do that before.
Yeah.
And another crazy story that a lot of my friends know, and I'll share this with you as well, is I had a friend invite me to his birthday party, and his birthday party was going to be right after school. He lived in the town where I went to school. And so he asked me if I could come to his birthday party. And I said, well, I think so. I would have to ask my host parents. I said, but my German is so bad. I'm not really sure I can ask them. I'm not really sure if I have the words, the vocabulary to ask them.
Yeah.
And also like to tell them where you live and who you are and who your parents are. And, like all the questions that they would ask. I wouldn't know how to answer that. And I said, so could you call my host parents' house tonight and ask them for me and say, you know, I want to invite Megan to this party. He spoke really good English. And so he said, yeah, no problem. I'll call. And so they said, yeah, it's no problem if she goes to the party, but you need to make sure she gets on the last bus home because we can't pick her up because we're going to be out to dinner with some friends. So the guy was like, yeah, no problem. I'll get her on the last bus. And he wrote down the bus number and he wrote down the destination of the bus. And my host parent said, it's the same route that you take to go home from school. So just take that same route. And when you get off, you know how to get home from this bus stop. And I was like, okay, I got this. Well, he put me on the wrong bus.
Oh, no.
So a lot of the buses in Germany have two routes. So you go one route, it's the same route, but the bus stops and then another bus will keep going to another stop. Well, that's what happened. The bus stopped at this stop and the bus driver got out of the bus. And I was like, where's she going? Like, I was thinking maybe she had to go to the bathroom. I was like, I don't know what's happening. Where's she going?
Yeah.
I got off and turned the lights off. And I was like, hey, I'm back here in the back of the bus. And she communicated to me somehow to say, this is the end of the bus. You have to get off. I had no idea how to get in touch with my host parents because they were, out to dinner before cell phones. I had no idea really where I was. I was like, I could read the name of the sign of the town, but I didn't know how close that was to my host parents' house. I had no idea where I was and no way to get home. I just sat down on a bench and started crying because I was so upset, because what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And this little lady, who I swear was an angel, like it probably was not a real person. It was an angel that came and sat with me. She came over and she grabbed my hand. She was like, are you okay? And somehow I was able to communicate that I was American. And somehow I was able to communicate that I needed to get home.
Yeah.
But she didn't speak any English. So she grabs my hand and takes me to the police station. And she walks me in and I hear her say English and I hear her say American. And then suddenly some young police officer comes up who spoke enough English for me to tell him what was going on. And he asked me if I knew my address. And I said, yeah. And he said, okay. Oh, he said, I know where that is. I'll take you home in a police car. So I get in the police car, not the back seat, but I get in the front seat of the police car. He drives me home.
Yeah.
And just as I'm pulling up to the driveway, my host parents also arrive.
Oh, goodness.
And we get out of the police car and the police officer gets out and explains to them what happens. And my host parents just laughed. They thought it was the funniest thing ever. They were just laughing and the police officer was laughing. And I was like, this is not funny, guys. This is not at all.
It's a little funny.
Yeah. No, it was not funny at the time. At the time, I was not amused. But then we got back in the house and my host parents picked up the phone and called the guy who invited me to the party. And they were like, dude, you put her on the wrong bus. Like, what? But the good news is I got home. Yeah. I was safe. And the next step that I did is I went and I wrote down the phone number for the neighbor. I wrote down the phone number for my friends and put them in my wallet. And I was like, in case I ever have to get home the next time and they're not home, I have a way.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness for happy endings.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh.
But it's not to say that people will help you, and people helped me all along the way. And really, I was really thankful of all the people that helped me through my exchange because I couldn't have done it by myself completely. And it helped me realize that, yes, I have my parents in the States, but also people can help you everywhere. There are kind of people everywhere.
Yeah. That's reassuring. I'm trying to imagine how I would handle the situation that you have described. And I don't think I could have handled that with the grace and decor that you did at all.
Yeah. It wasn't so graceful. There were quite a few tears.
Understandably so. And to kind of switch gears a tiny bit, but you'd mentioned, of course, with your parents being teachers, education is something that's very important. And you had mentioned that there's the 3 levels of schooling for German students. Were you able to choose the schooling that you were in? And did you notice big differences between American education and German education?
So I went to the higher level school. I don't know exactly why, but they put me in that. And I was a senior in high school in the United States. And I attended mostly 10th grade classes when I was in Germany because of my language skills. I just wasn't able to do it. But I actually attended like a lot of different classes there. My advisor was an English teacher. which made a lot of sense because he could help me communicate with me. But he taught like 5th grade. So I went to his class a lot and read books, or whatever, read their stories. Or I remember I read 'Twas the Night Before Christmas to his classroom, which was really a fun experience. But I did a lot of different classes while I was there that weren't necessarily my actual classes. But my goal when I was there was to have like academically, was to have a math class and to have a science class that I could transfer back to the United States. And I was successful at doing that. And then the rest of the classes were kind of fluff. But when I was in the United States high school, I always had the advanced classes. And I felt the advanced classes over here were very similar to the regular classes in that level of schooling.
I've heard that from a few of the students that we've had on here who went to Germany. They've had very similar experiences with the education system there and felt it was much more of a challenge over there, not just including the German language barrier, but did you enjoy the challenge?
I did. I enjoyed learning it from a different perspective. I didn't actually take a history class, but I sat in on a history class a lot of times, and it was interesting to hear the different perspective of history, the different emphasis on different parts of the history. Of course, I didn't know a lot about German history, so that was or European history in general.
Yeah,
we just don't know as much about it. Like, the people that coming in this direction don't know a lot about American history, or not as much about as they do European history. So that was kind of fun to see.
Yeah. That would be really cool. I'm a bit of a history buff and nerd myself. So I love that. That'd be awesome. But, and you had mentioned while you were there, I mean, it was a pretty historical time in Germany while you were there with the Berlin Wall coming down. So how did that affect your exchange experience?
Well, I had a couple really cool experiences with that. One thing that happened was my host father was a banker, and he ran like the community bank. And the community bank had a program where they were trying to educate the former East bankers to open a Western style bank, right? Like his. So they brought this man over from the former East and had him shadow my host father for a period of time, a month. I don't know how long.
Yes,
but he was over there, and he actually lived in our basement for that period of time. So I got to know him really well. And so when he went back home, he invited us to come and visit him. And he lived in Dresden. And at the time, Dresden was like still completely demolished, from World War II. I mean, they just had never really been able financially to rebuild the buildings and that kind of thing. And so going back to see him the year after the wall fell, and basically it was still the same as before, like they hadn't immediately built skyscrapers, of course, and so it was interesting to see the difference of the two sides of Germany. And he was really kind, and he was really curious about America, but he had a very different view of America than the Western people did, because he had been taught that, America was evil when he was growing up,
Yeah.
But that was a really cool thing. The other thing that was really interesting is my host father was a big car enthusiast. He loved different kinds of cars. So we went to a car auction that was near the former East border with our family. And there were all these people with tape measures. And none of us could figure out why. We were like, why are they carrying tape measures? And they would measure the car. They would take it, and one person would stand on it, and they would measure the car. And I kept asked my host father, and he was like, I have no idea what they're doing. He was like, I don't know what they're measuring the car. And so he was like, you're American. Go up and ask them. He was like, they'll talk to you. Just go up and tell them, hey, I'm an American. Ask. And so I went up and I asked somebody, and this man said, well, we're from the former East, and our car garages were built for trolleys. So some of the cars will not fit in our garages. So when we buy a car, we have to figure out if it'll fit.
Wow. Fascinating. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about that. So what did your host dad think about that?
Yeah, he found it really humorous, and he was like,
yeah.
I mean, because neither one of us had thought of that. That was the funny thing about it, that I hadn't thought of. None of the family could figure out. The whole family was there. We were like, we couldn't figure out why these people were measuring it. But it was just the architecture there was built different, for a different time.
Yeah,
and
fair. So along with checking out a German car show, did you have any other experiences in festivals or anything like that you were able to experience while you were there?
Yeah, my host father actually, he did many things. He did
Okay.
He ran a bank, but he also organized festivals. He organized like
Oh.
these community Oktoberfests, like a
Mm-hmm.
community size. So he would rent the tent,
Yeah.
and he would get the band, and he would get the alcohol, and he would hire the workers. I mean, it was like this
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. And so I actually
Mm-hmm.
kind of helped with that
Yeah.
for tips, basically, to help out
Cool.
doing stuff. And so that was really fun, and to enjoy the
Yeah.
music and the camaraderie, and Germans can go all out in these festivals. It gets pretty wild. One of the interesting things they did is the day after the like I said, the festival would start on Friday night, and
Mm-hmm.
on Saturday morning, the band, like the brass band of the town, would go
Mm-hmm.
around and wake everybody up at like 7 o'clock, walking through the
Oof.
streets, playing loud with loud trumpets, and yeah. And so occasionally I would go with them because his father was already there setting up, and so I would go with them, and like people would just be throwing stuff out the windows and be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, I could see that making people a little angry.
Yeah.
So fast forwarding a tiny bit, so it sounds like you were able to still keep a connection with your host family after being able to go to visit them 20 years later. So how were you able to keep that connection once you came back home?
Yeah, we kept in touch with letters and
Hmm.
emails and that kind of stuff, and um, yeah, just occasional communication methods. In fact, when I went to
Yeah.
visit them, it was kind of funny. The reason I was there is I worked for Volkswagen in Chattanooga.
Hmm.
And I was on foreign service assignment in Germany for a year. So I went over and worked in
Yeah.
Germany for a year. And Wolfsburg, where
Hmm.
I was working, was not very far from where I was on exchange. And so I said, I can't be living here for a year and not go visit them. I just can't. That's
Yeah.
just wrong. I can't do it. So I just one day showed up on their door. I just like went and knocked on their door, and they were home. That's how I visited them.
Oh my
So
gosh, how did they react?
they were super happy to see me. They were really happy to
Oh,
see me. And
yeah.
my host sister, they immediately called her. She lived in a different town, and she like got in the car with her kid, and she just like ran over in the middle of the afternoon, and and then I went and visited them several times after that during the year that I
Hmm.
was living there. So that was really cool.
Oh,
But I've
that's
also
so
kept a really
cool.
good touch. So the year after I went on exchange, I came
Yeah.
home and I lived with my parents my freshman year of college. So my freshman year of
Hmm.
college, my natural parents hosted a German exchange student who was in high
Oh,
school. So I call her my host sister, my exchange
yeah.
sister, and we are still
Hmm.
in very regular touch. She came to visit me for my
Oh.
mom's 80th birthday. She came over
Hmm.
and we talk. In fact, we just scheduled a call for next weekend. We can talk about once a month, once every other month, and it's a really cool thing to have a sister living all the way over in
Yeah.
Germany.
That's so cool. That's really all you could ever hope for with that hosting and exchange connection is just having that lifelong bond. You're really lucky that you were able to keep that up and keep it going. With working with Volkswagen, was that at all influenced by your exchange experience?
Well, for sure, the language is super helpful working
Yeah.
for Volkswagen. I use my German every day. If not speaking, I read emails or interpret
Hmm.
documents or whatever in German. So I'm using it every
Hmm.
day. So when I
Yeah.
first started working at Volkswagen, I of course tailored my resume when I applied, and I put on the top German speaking, and I put
Mm-hmm.
purchasing because that's what I did at the time. So,
Hmm.
and when I came to the interview, it was highlighted. It was highlighted with a highlighter and
Uh,
speaking, and so they were super excited to get somebody that spoke German because they knew how helpful it would be. And
yeah.
so yeah,
Marketable skills.
right. You gotta take them where you got them.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, you are still very connected to the YFU community even after your exchange. So, how did staying connected start for you? Were you originally a volunteer first, or did you start hosting first?
Well, we hosted the year after I came back. What
Hmm.
I just told you about
Yeah.
my sister, and my mom was a local
Yeah.
coordinator for years, and so I worked with
Okay.
her with helping her with the students because I also
Yeah.
knew very well what they were going through. So I helped her with that,
Yeah.
and I have been involved with CBYX doing the interviews for many years. When I was in college, I would
Mm.
go to the interviews. Sometimes I did the interviews in the town where I went to school, so that was kind of
Oh,
helpful. And
yeah.
I would help with the interviews and do that process. And
Mm-hmm.
And it was many years later that I started hosting. I was a volunteer for
Mm-hmm.
many years, though, in
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, in South Carolina. I did a lot of volunteering, but especially in Chattanooga
Yeah.
since I've moved. I've been very involved in the volunteers. And then we started hosting. Our first exchange student was from Argentina, and she lived with us in 2011. And
Oh.
then we had a very long break where we did not have anybody. And then we hosted 5 years ago our first of the latest string of students. I had a boy from Thailand who lived with us. And
Mm-hmm.
then we had a girl from Spain. And then we had a girl from Germany. And then we had a girl from Japan. And now we have another girl from Germany who just got here last week.
That's so exciting. And that's incredible. So what made you and your husband take the leap and decide to start hosting?
Well, the boy from Thailand was in a bit of a crisis. He had done some things that weren't quite up to IFU standards. Let me just put that way to be kind, just in case he watches this. But he just wasn't a good fit for the family that he was living with at the end of the day, is really what
Gotcha.
the situation was. He just didn't fit in with the family. And so he came to us at Christmas, kind of on an emergency basis, to say, can he stay with you for Christmas until he figures out how to go back to his school? And then about halfway through the Christmas break, my husband said to me, why don't we just see if he can stay here? He was like, we get along with him. He's a great kid. He's funny. Can he stay? And so I called my local coordinator or my staff person at the time, and I said, hey, do you mind if he stays? And she was like, yes, that'd be great. So he stayed with us the rest of the year. And then when he left, right before he left, my husband said, I think we want to do this again. And so we've done it ever since.
Oh.
Have you ever thought about bringing the world into your home?
With YFU USA, hey, that's us. You can. By hosting an exchange student, you'll experience a new culture right in your own home.
It's an incredible opportunity to make lifelong connections and help a young student discover the American way of life.
Visit yfuusa.org to learn more about how you can become a host family today. Does your husband have experience with studying abroad like you do?
No, he didn't study abroad. He did come visit me when I was in Germany, when I was living over there. He came over twice to come visit me, and he has worked with a lot of international people. He used to work for a company called Plastic Omnium, which makes bumpers for Volkswagen, like the plastic bumpers, and it's a French company. So there's a lot of people from Brazil, from France, from England that worked in his office there. So he's had a lot of international exposure. Plus, me working at Volkswagen, we have a lot of international folks that work with us, and he's met a lot of them. And so he also traveled. He was in the military, and he traveled with the Navy overseas. So I don't know. He really was not studying there, but he traveled there when he was doing that.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily believe that you have to have that study abroad experience in order to be a good host parent. It just being a good person and trying to be understanding really is the keys I feel. So, and then, so you continued hosting. What makes you and your husband choose the student to host? What stands out to you as somebody that, that's the one?
We like students that have a lot of interests. It's difficult in the United States, or it's difficult anywhere, to find friends from nothing, right? So you come over here, you know nobody. And we don't have any children living at our house. My stepson is older. So we don't have a way easily to connect them with the high school students. So we really like students that have a lot of varied interests where they can get involved in clubs and do different activities, because sometimes not every activity is available. So like if you like to, I don't know, snow ski in Chattanooga, there's just not a whole lot of opportunities to do that. But if you like to snow ski and you like to long distance run, well, we can get you involved in the track team, right? You know, we can get you involved in some kind of activity somewhere. So we like people that have a lot of varieties of activities that they do. And also just that seem like good students when you read, warm and open students when you read their information.
Yeah. And I'm curious with your perspective of not only being an exchange student yourself, but also being a local coordinator and helping to support these students and families. What do you feel makes a good host family?
I think just being open to the experience. and understanding that these students will come from a different background and come from different expectations, even though we tell them a million times. How many times do we tell them in NPDO, don't expect anything, don't expect
No.
it to be great, don't expect it to be horrible, just go in with an open mind. But you can't really turn that off in your head. You have something in your mind of what you want and but also sometimes there's this metaphor of the iceberg, a cultural metaphor of the iceberg, where at the bottom, underneath the water, is all the stuff that you don't see. It's the religious beliefs, it's your cultural upbringing, it's your, things like your parents were teachers and that influences how you feel, those kind of things. And what you see is what sticks up out of the water, the little tiny part of the iceberg. So whenever there's a problem with a student or with a family, trying to understand, I say, okay, you see this, but what is affecting it underneath? What is it really coming from? Are they scared of getting lost, and that's why they don't want to leave your side when you go somewhere? Is that the reason? Or is it that they really are scared? Why are they in their room? For example, why do they stay in their room? Is it because at home they stayed in their room and that was the expectation? Well, then you just need to tell them the expectation is when we play family game night, you have to come down. But you need to tell them that, because if you have two people making sets of assumptions, one of them is going to be wrong. So you have to be very communicative. We actually always do. We haven't yet with our new student. If she's listening in the hall, we're going to do it this weekend. There's a really cool, surprise. There's a helpful form with YFU that it's what we do in our house. And it goes through a list of things. Do we take off our shoes when we come in the door? Who empties the dishwasher? Where do you keep the towels? Like all these things that if you've lived in my house for a long time, of course you don't think twice about. But if you come into my house for the first time, you don't know. You don't know what the expectation is. And so you really have to say that. And with the students that don't speak a lot of English, I even write it down and give it to them. And I say, okay. So in case you didn't understand me verbally saying it, and suddenly you go, okay, am I supposed to clean my bathroom or not? And you look and you say, oh, yep, that's my responsibility. I have to clean my bathroom. So it's good, but you have to say it. And sometimes you have to say it multiple times, and sometimes you have to write it down, just to say what the expectations are, because on both sides, you're living with somebody for the first time, these new people, and you need to know what they expect of you. And then if they break the rules, then you have to deal with it. But the first couple, the first time that it happens is not like Armageddon.
Would you say that your experience as an exchange student and as a local coordinator has affected how you are as a host mom?
Yeah, I definitely would say so, because I've seen a lot of the challenges that can happen in host families and how they start. And the problem is that a lot of times YFU or the local coordinator don't know about the problem until it's too far gone to help you. Right? And that's unfortunate, because on both sides, on both the student side and on the host parent side. I had, unfortunately, a host parent one time. I went and got the student for our monthly visit, and I took her out to dinner. And while we were out to dinner, he called and he was like, I'm packing her suitcase. She can't come back. And I was like, what? And neither one of them has said anything to me about there being a problem. I didn't know anything was going on. And suddenly, of course she came and stayed with me. I wasn't going to leave her stranded, but it was such a shock. And she really didn't know that it was that bad of a problem. She knew there were problems, but she didn't realize it was that far gone. And looking back at that as a local coordinator, but also as a host mother, I would never want my exchange student to get to that point and be surprised that I wanted them to leave. Of course, I've never had the issue that I wanted any of my students to leave, but you have to tackle that from, the beginning, or at least at some point you need to sit down. Okay, we're having a problem. This is what we need. We need to figure out how to solve it. Either get the local coordinator involved, or get YFU involved, or somebody to help solve the problem, and not let it get to the point where it's horrible. So even though we as a family don't necessarily do that, because obviously you can't kick your kids to the curb, or my husband to the curb. But so I have to be conscious of that, especially with a student who doesn't speak our language and isn't used to our culture, to make sure we communicate when there's a problem, and make sure we understand, okay, this happened today. This can't happen again. This is how we're going to do it in the future. And I think maybe I wouldn't have done that before. I would have just been like, I can deal with it. it'll be okay, until it got to the
Yeah.
point where it was boiling over. And then we were like, what are we going to do? So,
Right. And you'd mentioned the challenges that hosting can bring. What are some challenges that you and your husband have faced during your hosting journey that you overcame?
we've been really lucky. We've had some really awesome kids, I do have to say.
Yeah.
I've really been lucky with that. Or not even lucky, but
Yeah.
I think we've had good experiences. But we
Yeah.
have had some funny experiences. One of the funny experiences that I think of is we had a student, our very first exchange student was from Argentina, and
Mhm.
she came from a very wealthy family, and
Okay.
we are not very wealthy. And
Yeah.
in Argentina, when you're very wealthy, you have a lot of domestic help. So you have people that cook, you have people that clean your house, you have people that
Mhm.
do all kinds of stuff. We don't have any of that.
Yeah.
It's just me and my husband, right? And so
Right.
my students, day one, help with the dishes, help vacuum, do their own laundry. Like we are not here to be their maid service, right?
No.
So the girl that came from Argentina, the first day she was like, "What is my chore? I want to know. What is my chore? I want to know." And we were like, "Okay, you're doing the dishes. You're doing the dishwasher. You're loading the dishwasher every night after dinner." And we were like, "We'll show you how. No problem. But this is your job." She was like, "Got it. I'm good. I'm going to do it." So every night, at dinner, we were done with dinner. She'd pick up the plates and she would go, scrape the plates, put them in the dishwasher. Then one day, my husband was unloading the dishwasher and he was like, what is this on the plates? And he couldn't figure it out. And we were like, and he asked me, he was like, did you notice something getting in the dishwasher? And I was like, no, but who knows? Maybe it did. Maybe we accidentally, something in there. So we kind of let it go. Then about a week later, it happened again. We were like, okay, something's going on. What's going on? And it just so happened that both of those nights, we'd had a paper plate on the table that held like some bread or something. And she had picked the paper plate up and put it in the dishwasher.
Oh, no.
And so the second time, my husband was like, there's like some film, like this looks like paper. And then I was like, didn't you have a paper plate? So we had to get the education of, you don't put the paper in the dishwasher. But how would you know that if you've never loaded the dishwasher before? Of course you wouldn't know that.
Right.
So it was a funny moment. Everybody laughed, and of course she never did it again. She was like, super embarrassed because, of course, she logically thought about it. She was like, "Of course it's water. Of course the paper is not going to hold up." But yeah.
Right. Yeah, but exactly. Like if that's something that is brand new to you, you've never experienced that before. Of course, that's not going to be your first thought. It's like all the plates go in the dishwasher. That's what my host mom taught me. Of course.
Right.
I see the logic is there. The logic is pretty sound. Just maybe not the execution. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, speaking of problems, we've had problems with curfew. We've had problems with some grade issues, not turning in homework and that kind of stuff. But again, that's something that you have to address quickly. Like if the curfew is exceeded, say, okay, I have to treat you like my own child. The next time it happens, this is the consequence. This is what's going to happen if you miss curfew the next time or don't get grades up to the expectation that we expect. So
right.
But that's pretty mild. It's a pretty, yeah.
That's good. And as a host mom and as somebody who is advising other host parents, how do you talk about and help them to have these conversations with their students and set these expectations?
Well, I just think it's important to stress to them what the expectation is and why there's an expectation. So on the curfew to say, okay, we expect you to be home by X time. And the reason we want you to be home is because it's not safe to be out after this time. You're not able to drive. So I don't want you to get in a car with somebody who has had maybe some alcohol or something. And it's just safer if you're home. And just saying an arbitrary, it's just like your own kids, just saying arbitrary to a 16-year-old, you have to be home at 9:00 at night for no reason. They're going to be like, why do I have to be home at 9:00 at night? But if you say you have to be home at 9 because I have an early morning the next morning and I want to make sure you're home safe, before I go to bed, then they'll go, okay, well, that makes sense. Right. So you have to treat them somewhat like adults to explain this to them because you think about it, they come halfway across the world to live in your house. So they're pretty independent students. They're not your average run-of-the-mill students that are really trying to break your rules. So we try to treat them with the respect that deserves.
Yeah. They're people. They can understand logic. They can understand reasoning. Maybe it'll take a second with trying to translate and understand in the language, but they're still people. They're going to understand that a reason. That makes sense. So I'm curious if with the students that you have hosted, were there any fun like cultural traditions or like dishes that they were able to share with you and your husband that you maybe still continue doing today?
Oh goodness, there's been so many. My girl from Argentina taught us how to make like a paella, a version of paella that they eat in Argentina that we did. Our boy from Thailand, like everything that was hot, like any hot food that you can imagine, like spicy hot. We were not fans. We tried it, but we were like, yeah, no, we're ready. My girl from Spain taught us how to make a Spanish omelet, and we occasionally still make that. It's a similar thing to American omelet, except it's really thick. It's like a thicker. So we did that. Yeah, Germany. We did some schnitzel. We've done different things. And my girl from Japan really loves sushi. And so we took her out to all the sushi places in town until she found the one that she liked the best. So that's where we went a lot. So we tried a lot of different kinds of sushi with her.
Nice.
But it's also interesting the other direction, finding out what they like and the American craziness. The girl that just arrived this week, when I asked her if she'd ever tried Chick-fil-A, she went nuts. And she was like, oh, when I came to the United States before on a smaller exchange, she was here for like a couple weeks. And she was like, I went to Chick-fil-A once and it was the best thing ever. So she was super excited to get a Chick-fil-A.
Oh. Are there any other like common things that you hear with the students that you host or that you support as a local coordinator that they all go crazy for, they all love to eat?
Well, love to eat and love to go to. There's, of course, the famous Buc-ee's. I mean, you can't live without going to Buc-ee's. And that is definitely a cultural eye-opening experience. We haven't taken our new girl there yet. We haven't been that direction, but it will come.
She's in for a treat.
We walked in with my Japanese girl and she said to me, this is typical America in one store. It's just one store of typical America. It's big. Yeah. There is everything here. You can, buy beer, you can buy fudge, and you can buy, a t-shirt all in one place. Yeah. This is, and get gas. It's America.
Quite an insightful thing there. Honestly, yeah, she's absolutely right. Buc-ee's is America. I love that. Any other standouts that you've noticed in your time supporting and hosting students?
Reese's cups are really a big thing. Pop-Tarts, of course. And I have to definitely teach. Pop-Tarts have a lot of calories.
Oh,
they are tasty. But you need to remember that they have a lot of calories. If you eat them every morning for breakfast, your waistline will grow. Just be aware. My last girl loves Skittles. That was
nice.
A thing that you can't really get in Japan.
And with the student that you're currently hosting, has she given you any sort of bucket list items that she has to try or see or do?
Not yet. We're still kind of new. She did work to work out with the volleyball team, which was a big dream of hers, to work out with the volleyball team here in the United States. So she's doing that at her school. Yeah. But we're still kind of new with getting to know what she wants to do. We're going to go to the world's longest yard sale this weekend. Starts in Michigan, goes to Alabama.
Yes. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
So that's what we're doing this weekend. So she's excited about that.
I hope she finds some treasures and you as well at the world's longest yard sale. That's amazing. On a personal level with you and your husband, after hosting as the students that you have you noticed any changes in your dynamic together in how you raise your stepson and your children?
Well, my stepson has been out of the house since we've been hosting. Yeah. He hasn't been living here since then, but it does make it more intentional to build that bond. And it's fun my stepson doesn't live very far away. He lives just a couple miles away from us in a different town, but close by. Yeah. And so it's fun for him to get he's an only child. So for him to get, he has 6 brothers and sisters, that he can, so he has brothers and sisters around the world and he loves getting to know them and talking to them about their culture. And so that's a neat thing for him to experience. And I think with my husband and I, we never raised a child together because my stepson, by the time that he came to live, was older. And
Gotcha.
We get the experience of actually being parents together, which takes a lot of communication and a lot of skill and a lot of, patience and troubleshooting and that kind of thing together. So that's good. It's good for our marriage for sure.
Awesome. It's good to know. And do you have any advice for future host families or somebody who is considering hosting?
My advice would be for one thing, we talked about making expectations very clear, spelling out the rules, writing them down if you have to, making it known. But also, you don't have to be like this super world traveler. You don't have to go to New York and Orlando in 1 year. If that is not what you would normally do in a year, you don't have to do it this year. These students are perfectly happy. We took our student to a baseball game, a local baseball game, the first weekend she was here. The ticket costs $15. She was just as happy doing that as she would be going to a Braves game because it is still her first baseball experience, right? So, doing the local things, going to the local high school football games, going to the local farmers market, going to the world's longest garage sale costs me nothing, right?
Yeah.
It will probably cost me something. I'm sure I will buy something, but it doesn't cost me to take her, right?
Right.
I'm not paying for whatever she buys. So, that kind of local stuff, there's so much free to do or very low cost to do in your area. You don't have to travel the world. YFU offers the trips that the exchange students can take. If they want to go to New York City, if they want to go to California, there are trips that they can take. And that is not on the host family. You don't have to do that. Because some people are scared when they host.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they think that's all on them. They're like, I have to take them to Hawaii and all these other places. No, you don't have to do that. There are agencies that will help with that, but that's not on you. And there's plenty of stuff to do that they will never experience outside of your hometown right there. That is great for them to see what America really is. That's great. Do you and your husband have plans with Lottie, your current exchange student, anything exciting to show her, something that's like a bucket list thing that you have to show her before she goes home?
Just the everyday life stuff, honestly, visiting our families. My mom lives in Tennessee. My husband's family lives in South Carolina, visiting them, going and visiting the local things. The second day not even 24 hours after she arrived, my stepson's girlfriend graduated college. And so she got to go to her graduation within 24 hours of arriving on the plane. So that was kind of a bucket list thing for her because she'd always seen it in the movies. She'd always seen it in the, in stuff about America. So she got to see that. It was a relatively small graduation because it was summer, but it was still a graduation. It was fun. But things like that. She's excited to go to prom and do all that kind of stuff. First football game is coming up. So high school football game. So all of that stuff is what we enjoy taking them to do. And of course, Buc-ee's.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to visit America and go to Buc-ee's. So as a local coordinator and as a host mom, I'm sure you see that the students that come here do have some expectations or ideas of what America is going to be like. High School Musical is one that I hear a lot. How do you help to manage those expectations?
Well, one thing they think of is that everybody lives in Hollywood and everybody lives in these McMansions and, drives these super fancy cars and all that kind of stuff. But what's funny is that the things that they expect are frequently not true. We don't live in a mansion. We don't, drive a Maserati. I do drive a Volkswagen, of course, because I work for Volkswagen. But the things that they don't expect are the funny things. I think my current girl has said about 50 times that she's been here, everything is so big. The cars are big. Of course, here in Tennessee, we have monster huge trucks, right? Everybody drives a truck and they're 7 feet off the ground. And, everything's big. The high school's big. Walmart's big. Everything is big compared to what she has in Germany. But it's not necessarily what they see in the movies. And I try to impress on them, this is real life. Everybody in wherever you're coming from also isn't whatever stereotype that you have, that Americans have. All the Germans don't wear a lederhosen. There are some people that wear a lederhosen, but not everybody. It's not a common thing. So I try to tell them that we have stereotypes too, and they're also not true. So they're true of some people, which is why we have stereotypes, but
absolutely
not true of everybody.
To kind of start to wrap it up and finish our time together. Are there any plans to visit any of your former students in the future?
I would love to. Somehow, even though we've hosted this long, we haven't had any students get married or anything yet or had any babies yet. There's still time for the babies. But the marriages, I'm waiting for, a couple of them to start like moving on to that stage of their life, and then I can go and be there. But I definitely want to go and visit the students around the world. Because I have them now in every side of the world. I have South America, I have Asia, I have Europe. So I really hope to be able to enjoy that soon, to go and visit some of them. To also make it the full circle, because it was very enjoyable for me to go and visit my host family many years later and see kind of how, because you stay frozen in time. Like my experience, you think that's where their life ends too, because that's where my life went and ended with them. But of course, that's not true. And it goes on. And to see, my host sister had children when I went back, and I got to meet her children. And so it's neat to see the generational effect of YFU. Yeah. That was interesting, actually. I did a lot of interviews this year for Americans going overseas, and also reading the profiles of many of the students coming this direction. How many of them, their parents went on exchange? And I think this is the first year it really hit me that so many parents, had that effect. Like my current student, her mother came to America on exchange. And so that's why it was very important to her for her daughter to go and do the same experience. So it's neat to see the life of YFU being around now. How many years? How many years are we?
Oh my gosh, we're going on 75.
Yeah. To see now that started are now having students that are going. So it's a really, really cool thing to see.
Absolutely. And I have a couple more questions before we close our time together. My first of the two, after these students have had their time here on exchange with you and your husband and it's over, how do you continue that relationship with them when they're back home?
It's a challenge for sure to do. I mean, in a way it's a challenge. In a way it's not so much. I mean, obviously with my host parents, I had a hard time keeping in touch because, dark ages. I think I've said that 20 times. Dark ages, and I had to write letters and whatever. But now we can schedule time. In fact, 2 weekends ago, before my last student got here, I talked with both my girl from Germany and my girl from Japan on the same day, like 1 a.m. and 1 p.m, because of the time zone differences. So we try to schedule time to keep up with them and keep tabs on, keep in touch with what's going on in their life. And, WhatsApp is an amazing thing. I got a WhatsApp from my girl from Japan this morning. She was just like, look at what I have for breakfast. I mean, it doesn't have to be like super important, but this is what I had for breakfast. It was sushi, by the way.
I was going to say, was it a Pop-Tart?
Oh, no. About that. So it's cool to keep in touch, but you really have to make an effort to do it, because it's yet another thing on your list. But the other cool thing is that my students keep in touch with each other. So that's kind of a cool thing. So my Japanese girl made the poster for my German girl at the airport, like her welcome poster. And she left her a note in the room that said, welcome to the family. And they correspond on WhatsApp. So that's really a neat thing.
That is so cool. I haven't heard that yet. That is so sweet and heartwarming. Oh my goodness. What a sweetie pie.
Yep. She is a sweet girl.
My final question, Megan, is, I mean, you've done a lot. You've been an exchange student. You're a local coordinator. You're hosting students. What makes you stick with YFU?
Wow. It's a great organization. I really enjoy the support of the staff and the organization worldwide. I know a lot of the local coordinators for other organizations, and I hear a lot that support doesn't exist as well as it does with YFU. And I'm really thankful for that. I had an incident as a local coordinator many years ago where I had a problem that wasn't getting addressed, and I called the president and I said, listen, we need to talk. And he picked up the phone and he talked to me for 30 minutes and he resolved the issue. and I appreciate that, because I've only used that card once in all the years that I've done that. I've done mine. So it's not like I'm a person that cries wolf, but the staff is really supportive, and that shows in the quality of the families. It shows in the quality of the students and the prepared from around the world. The German side that prepared the girl that comes over here, you can tell that she heard the message. She heard the message she has to do chores. She heard the message that she needs to be open, and that's so important for these students to succeed. And without that, I think it would be a very different experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy for you that YFU has made such a tremendous impact in your life and is continuing to make an impact in your life and continuing to make an impact in all of these students and host families' lives and volunteers' lives as well. And I mean, what more could you ask for out of 75 years, honestly?
It's a great thing. It's a great thing. Who would have thought in the group of 25 or whatever in the first 75 years ago that this would be true, and the effect that this has on the world, for sure.
Yeah. I wonder what Rachel Andreessen would think of everything and how YFU looks now. I'd love to, it would have been so great to be able to pick her brain about all of this, but either way, we thank her for time.
Yeah, for sure.
And Megan, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your incredible story with me and with the listeners. And I wish you and your husband and Lottie the best of luck this year. I hope you have a wonderful time together.
Thank you. We will have a great year. I know we'll have a great year.
And I'm curious if people were curious and want to see how things are with your host family journey this time around. Are you on social media? Is there anywhere people can find you if they want to ask questions or want to keep up?
Sure. Yeah, we're on Instagram, and I'm old school on Facebook. So if the parents in touch with me, they can find me there.
Perfect.
But yeah, for sure, we're on Instagram. I can drop those handles to you, so you can communicate them. But yeah, it's fun to have people watch the journey.
Yeah. And we will make sure that all that information is in the episode notes so you can keep up with Megan and her journey as a host mom and a volunteer. And this has been this episode of Life Exchange Stories of Understanding. I have been your host, Kelsey Ross. Until next time, bye.
Listen to Life Exchange Stories of Understanding now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.